In this segment, we're going over garden design, a few more things for you to consider as you plan your habitat. Okay, so the first thing is seasons. Different butterflies fly at different kinds of times. The first thing is seasons. Different butterflies fly at different times of the year. And depending on where you are and where your butterfly habitat is, that will directly affect the activity that goes on in your garden. So if you are somewhere where there is winter, as I mentioned, there will be a dormant season to your butterfly garden. And that's contrasted to if you live in a tropical place or a warm place closer to the equator, where butterfly gardening can actually go on 12 months of the year. Also, containers. I did mention it, but I want to reiterate that if you're making a butterfly garden on a patio or on a balcony, it's perfectly fine to have it all in containers. Sometimes containers are also useful if you don't have enough space in your garden. So for instance, in my garden in South Florida, some of the species of butterflies that I attract lay their eggs on trees. And I don't have a big space. I have a small little urban plot of land. And some of these trees get to 80 feet tall, and I don't have room for that. So when it comes to those trees, I keep them in containers. Of course, that does require a little bit more water just to keep them, hydrated. But it's better for me than putting those trees in the ground and having something unruly that I can't deal with. So there are different reasons that you could use all containers or a combination of containers or plants in the ground, but that's perfectly fine as long as the plants are happy. I do want to stress one more time that you should be combining nectar sources and host plants if you want to accommodate all parts of the butterfly life cycle. But if you're in a really limited space, and you won't, like for a balcony, for instance, let's say you're going to do this on a balcony of a high-rise condo, you don't have a lot of room, you might just want to put a few host plants, just for one or two kinds of butterflies and maybe one nectar source. You might not have the luxury of planting dozens of plants. I've noticed that if you're butterfly gardening in a rural area, it can be a little bit more difficult to get butterflies to lay their eggs in your garden. And that's because they are laying their eggs out in the wild. There's so much wild native forest or space around them that your little plot of land isn't attracting them the way it would if you were in an urban area. Oftentimes in urban areas, like in South Florida where I live, there aren't a lot of natural areas. So the butterflies are sort of desperate to lay their eggs, and that's why I get results very quickly in my urban area, because these butterflies are so desperate for the plants. The host plants are not much, people don't really plant those plants generally. A lot of times host plants are obscure or things that gardeners don't really know about. So when I put those in my garden and the butterflies can smell them from a mile away, I get results really quickly. That doesn't always happen in urban areas. There are always limitations, and I do have people asking me about raising butterflies in screened-in enclosures or lanais. My suggestion is to not do that, only because there are a lot more complicated things that go on if you're going to try to raise butterflies in a lanai. You need to make sure you have genetic diversity. You need to make sure you're controlling for diseases and other things that are very common to insects that are beyond the scope of this course. What I would say is if you're starting out as a beginner, don't worry about trying to trap the butterflies. Just do this naturally, because this is the way that it's been going on for millions of years. And your best bet is to just go along with nature instead of fighting it. Also, I went over those 10 components. To end this segment, I want to say that maybe when I went over these 10 components, you were a little bit sad, because I want to say that maybe as I end this section, I want to point out that I don't want you to be discouraged if, for instance, one or more of the components are something that you're not going to be able to do. So for instance, let's say, I said you need sun. Let's say you say, well, I don't have any sunny area. I live in the northern hemisphere and I only have northern exposure. Now what? Well, I just want to say this would be an ideal butterfly garden. And if you can't hit all 10 targets exactly for those 10 components, don't be discouraged. Just do what you can do. Insects are really versatile, and you probably will get butterflies even without a perfect garden because bugs are really good at surviving. It's what they do best. I have a more in-depth habitat design worksheet. Take action. There is a habitat design worksheet that I have created for you that will help you narrow down some of these things and maybe just hone in a little bit better how you're going to design your butterfly habitat. Thanks for watching this segment. I'll see you in the next one.